Welcome back to the tutorial, and onto our next topic. We are talking about variables. Now, variables are very important when writing programs, and we'll see that really soon. Variables are simply containers for storing data values. Okay, so you have a value and you need to reuse it or use it sometime in the future. Variables gives you a simple way for you to store that value in memory and to be able to call it from memory later on in your program and use it for something else. Say for instance, in your house you get a storage box, okay, for storing your books or for keeping your books. Okay, you can call that box your variable. Okay, and the books you keep in there are the values that you want to use later, because of course you want to read later on. So let's just see an example here. When you create a variable, this is what you're essentially doing. You're creating a point in memory. This box is a memory allocation, okay, and you have a name reference. That name reference is what lets you access this memory location, but also your memory location has an address, but the address doesn't concern you. Okay, that is known by the computer, is known by your program, but it doesn't concern you. What you need is the variable name. Now, when you provide the variable name, your program knows what address to look for and to retrieve the value. Now, whatever value you set will be put into the memory location, just like we have here, John. So what does this look like in code? This is a general structure for you to create a variable in JavaScript. You can see just one very simple line. We use the keyword var, var, and followed by the variable name. You can name your variable anything, but there are certain rules to follow when giving variable names to avoid some conflicts. You use the equal to sign, which is basically the assignment operator, and you provide a value. Now, we looked at values recently, so a value can be what? A string. Remember, strings in quotes. It can be a number, it can be a boolean. Any valid value can be put in here. So if we should write an actual code now, you should have something like this: var, the name of the variable is name, equals to, and the value should be John. This will create something like we have here: name, John in the memory box. It has an address that we don't know and we don't care about, so long as we know our variable name. I'm back in our code, and let's just get rid of everything we have here and start with what we just saw. So what we just did was var, right? Name equals to John in quotes, which means that John is a string. So var, it's a keyword that says, hey, I'm trying to create a variable here and I want to call my variable name, and inside that name memory location that you're creating for me, can you just put in John as the value I want to keep in there? Remember the example I gave earlier. You buy a storage box and you want to keep your books inside that storage box. Okay, so later on you can go to the box and get the books. Okay, now we've declared a variable. Awesome, this memory location is there. In fact, if I save and reload, we see nothing. Okay, but that doesn't mean the variable was not created. It has been created. So what do you do with the variable? Well, anything you can do with the value, but rather than using the value directly, we make use of the variable. So this is how it works. When you use a variable, it goes to the memory location and it checks for a value that is there. Now if it finds a value, remember values have data types. Now whatever value it finds there, you can do whatever you can do with the regular value with that variable name. Okay, so it's just like saying the name becomes a placeholder for the value, because the value will always take the place of the name. Just that your variable makes it easy for you to reuse that value later on in future. Okay, so let's just write one simple line of code. Still using our document.write to print to the browser screen. I'll write document.write, and this time I'm not just going to put a value, I would provide our variable. So to use a variable, you just provide a variable name, and in this case we call our variable what? Name. And so I will just write in here name. So what happens? The program says name here. It goes to the memory location name and says, okay, what is inside name? So it's John. So it brings John here, and our document.write can print it to the screen. So if I save and reload, John is what we see on our screen. Now you can define as many variables as you want. For instance, I'll create a new variable var. Following the format, the variable name, I want to call this variable name age equals to, and you can give it any valid value. In this case, I want a number, okay, not a string. And numbers are just, well, numbers. So 200 and semicolon. And I will have another document that writes my variable name is age and close. So what happens? This is age. It looks for the memory that it was defined to age. What is the value there? 200. It pulls that 200 and places it right there. If I save, refresh, of course I have John for the name and 200 for the age. Now you might just be thinking, well, why didn't you just put 200 here, right? For this program, yes, maybe, but as we go on, you will see why variables are really important for you to define, and how they help you to not reuse some sort of values. Before I end this video, I just want to mention a few things about creating variables. One, you can't create a variable starting with a number. Okay, let me just write that here. Your variable should not start with a number. You can't have age as a variable, but they can contain a number. You can have h2 as a variable name. Okay, should not start with number, but can contain a number. All right, this should not be a reserved word. Okay, so we will see this, but there are some words that your program uses for themselves. For instance, var. You cannot have var, okay, to when you're declaring a variable, because var is already used for something to specify that you are trying to create a variable. Okay, so it should not be a reserved word. And there's still a few other rules that you will follow, but I think these are the most important ones I just want to mention. Now we will get to work with the others and see what they're about. All right, so just a quick exercise for you before you move on to the next video. I want you to create 4 variables, each for the data types that you know. So 4 variables. Okay, create 4 variables, 1 variable for a string, 1 for a number, 1 for a float, and 1 for a boolean. Of course, I've already given you an example of string and number, So you can just follow suit and create this for, just so you practice and you get used to defining variables, and you can actually do document.write to see how it looks like. All right, I hope you will actually do that exercise, and I'll see you in the next video.